It's always a good thing for a candidate to be able to say that they've walked in the shoes of their voters. You received some surprising news at the age of 16 that has brought you here running for the House in Pennsylvania. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Mm-hmm. And actually, I think it's interesting because when I first started knocking on doors last year, I wasn't sure if my story was relatable. I wasn't sure if people could put themselves into my shoes where they would understand where I was coming from. And also, I didn't want to knock on their door and ask to represent them and only talk about things that were specific to me. But very quickly, I found that it was unavoidable. Everything I went through, it colored everything I became. It definitely influenced all of the decisions I've made and all of the things I care about. So I always tell people I had a very normal life. I think we all take for granted sometimes just a normal childhood, middle class upbringing. And then I did get pregnant at 16 and I made the choice to have my son when I was 17. At that moment, I was introduced to an entirely new world over here that was just different than the comfort and the security that I was used to. I had to navigate welfare. And anyone that thinks welfare is easy and you can coast and put your feet up has no idea what they're talking about. It is very difficult to get. It is very difficult to keep. And you have to apply for everything separately. You have to be incredibly poor to actually qualify. And so I navigated welfare in the forms of healthcare for myself, healthcare for my infant, utility assistance. I don't know why that's my favorite one because it was such a tangible thing when the state was able to say, here's $20 towards your gas bill so your home can be warm. It just made such a big impact on me. All these different things that you take for granted were suddenly there for me. I utilized them. I realized how difficult it was in that razor thin margin when you have benefits and you don't anymore, but I persevered throughout that. And that safety net that you mentioned absolutely caught me. I always feel very grateful that Pennsylvanians continued to vote Democratic to keep that safety net in place. I know sometimes when we vote, it's abstract. It wasn't to me. Every time you voted to keep that there, it benefited me. You caught me. And now I find myself on the other side. And I always tell people it's not enough. I feel like I made it out. I feel like I made it through. But what happens now? Am I going to let the door shut behind me? It's untenable to me. It is not enough that I make it through. It's enough that I now have that knowledge and I can hold the door open for the next person. So that's what that's like. I know the day-to-day of being a teenage mom is it's dreary, it's tough. And now that I have the perspective of being older too, it definitely was informative in a lot of different ways that honestly, I tell people all the time, it gave me a lot more than it took. I know that it was difficult, but it gifted me with just a fresh set of eyes that I never would have had otherwise.
There's got to be a lot of choices that have to be made when you are in that situation, struggling, a young mother, a newborn. Were there days where it was literally food or get the car fixed?
Absolutely. Every single decision you make is life or death. Everything that you make. And it's not that violence and danger do come along with poverty, and they are sisters in that everything that goes along with poverty. However, if you have to fix your car, you do not get to eat. You do have to play a shell game of who gets paid when. You have to keep your electricity on, but you also need to have a cell phone on, and you also need to have your car insurance and rent and all of those different things. And so it is not specific to me. Every person that's gone through poverty plays that shell game. They all have a running knowledge of every single cent that they have to their name. And a lot of times when it came down to being hungry, you would think that would be a last resort, but when your child's hungry, that is very much on the table. You will do anything to keep their status quo as high as possible, and you'll kind of take the hits if necessary.
You've mentioned in other interviews, and I really like this line, poverty is not a reflection of one's character. I'm wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
I think sometimes I always want to specify too that my experiences with poverty were so clear to me because of the privilege I had before and the privilege I had after. When I first found myself in poverty, I was indignant. I was like, how dare this happen to me? Because I had enjoyed privilege without realizing it for so long. And so when you find yourself there, you think, well, I can definitely go back. I was very clever. I was very smart. I'm responsible. That should be enough to get me out. But the way that our system is set up, we are one disease, one illness away from people that have done everything right, who have savings in the bank, who have paid all of their bills, who are responsible citizens, from falling to that safety net as well. Poverty does not care about how clever you are. Poverty doesn't care about anything. It's not a moral defect. It's not a character flaw at all. If that was the case, then the person sitting before you now that sometimes gets applause at events for everything I've gone through, I wouldn't have gone through it in the first place. It can happen to anyone, and you get real humble real quick.
Would you like to take an opportunity to brag about your child a little bit? He's full grown now. You don't look like you have a full grown son, but you do. And how's he doing, and how does he feel about Mom's campaign?
Yes, it's funny is no one's ever asked me that question before, but last year when I ran, again, you have to petition hundreds of your neighbors to get your name on the ballot. And that's a tough process. I didn't know if I was going to make it through. I was so new to the process that I kept it really quiet. I had like a secret campaign until I knew that my name was secure on the ballot. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up. I didn't want them to get attached to me if I couldn't even make it past that first hurdle. That's very big, but intentionally so. And so once I had done all of that, I came in and I said, I want to tell you, buddy, that I'm running for office. And he said, that's dope. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that is high praise. So yeah, he's a 6 foot tall, 17-year-old. He is incredibly empathetic. He's incredibly emotionally intelligent. He is his own person. He's been his own person since the moment he was born. So it's been fun to watch him in all those stages of life. And now to see him on the other side, he's got a wicked sense of humor. And he's just, this new generation, this like TikTok generation, they are fearless. No, me neither. Right. Well, let me tell you.
I can pretend I know TikTok, but I don't know TikTok. But yes, I relate to what you're saying. Please continue. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the
fearlessness.
It's these kids. They are fearless. When they see something wrong, they'll tell you. They are on point, and he's the same way.
They're going to have a huge influence on the state of politics in very shortly. I would say maybe 20 years ago, you might have to wait till somebody hit the age of 35 or 40 to really become politically aware. But
well said.
The instance with your son, the availability of that information gets them activated so much earlier, which I think is a good thing. Is he going to be a Democrat? Do we know?
Do you know what's funny? Is when he was young, I never wanted to tell him what to think. I wanted him to have that platform. It's a mile-wide meadow. You can do whatever you want in it and come out with your own ideals. And he had sometimes conservative views, not Republican views in particular, but conservative views. He likes things to stay the same, and he likes that. So he has evolved. He has evolved on his own. He's his own brand, which I think is kind of normal nowadays. I think the next generation isn't going to love the label of Democrat or Republican, which has consequences. You can't, in Pennsylvania, you can't participate in a primary unless you have one of those designations. It's very annoying. But yeah, he likes to float around labelless.
Excellent. Since you're new to social media, maybe this isn't the best thing in the world, but I'm going to throw it to you to do the social media pitch for Heather. Can you do it?
You know what? We are at Vote Heather for PA everywhere. It's consistent. Twitter, Instagram.
It's true. Yes, you are correct. Heather for PA on Twitter. Heather for PA on Instagram. Heather for PA on Facebook. The website is the only different one you have to remember. VoteHeatherForPA.com. Heather MacDonald running for the 87th district in Pennsylvania. So thank you for taking the time to speak to me, and I hope you knock Greg Rothman right off that pedestal.
That's dope. That's dope. That's dope.